Jai-Ho Kim stood at the entrance of the Galactic Academy of Sciences, looking up at the tall crystal towers that reached into the purple sky. His heart beat faster, partly from excitement and partly because of the thin air. The artificial atmosphere here was set for the comfort of most galactic species, but for a human from Earth, it felt like standing on a mountaintop. The welcome letter had warned him about the differences. Lower gravity, thinner air, and weaker artificial sunlight were just the start. Ji-Ho adjusted the small device on his chest that helped him breathe better. He had trained for months to get ready for this exchange program, but nothing could fully prepare him for being the only human in the most prestigious school in the galaxy. As he walked through the entrance, other students moved away from him. Some looked scared, others curious. Ji-Ho heard their whispers clearly. His Earth-evolved ears were much better at picking up sounds than those of his new classmates. "Is that the Deathworlder?" one student asked. "I heard humans can survive things that would kill most species," another whispered. A tall, slim student with bright blue skin approached him. "Welcome to the Academy. I am Do-Young Lee, your guide for today." Do-Young's translator worked perfectly, making his alien speech sound like clear Korean. "Your room is in the special quarters section. We had to adjust it to Earth standards." Jai-Ho smiled, trying to look friendly. "Thank you. I hope it wasn't too much trouble." "Not at all. Though we did have to strengthen the floor and furniture. Your Earth gravity training makes you much heavier than most students here." As they walked through the halls, Jai-Ho saw students from at least 20 different species. Some floated in anti-gravity bubbles, others walked on multiple legs, and a few seemed to glide across the floor. He felt like a bull in a china shop, each of his steps careful and measured. In the dormitory section, they met Hae-Yun Park, a student with silvery skin who would be living next door. She looked at Jai-Ho with big purple eyes. "Is it true that on Earth, water falls from the sky?" she asked. Jai-Ho nodded. "Yes, we call it rain. Sometimes it even freezes and falls as snow." Hae-Yun's eyes grew even wider. "And you just walk around in it, without protection?" "Most of the time, yes. We even play in it sometimes." Do-Young and Hae-Yun looked at each other in shock. In their worlds, such weather would be considered a natural disaster. Jai-Ho's room was notably different from the others. The gravity was set to Earth normal, making Do-Young and Hae-Yun move slowly and with visible effort. The air was thicker and the lighting brighter. A special food synthesizer was installed to create Earth-safe meals. "Your first class is tomorrow morning," Do-Young said, checking his tablet. "Basic Xenobiology with Professor Taiwan Kang. The professor is very excited to meet you. No human has ever attended the academy before." As his guides left, Jai-Ho sat on his reinforced bed and looked out the window at the strange world before him. 3 moons hung in the purple sky, and flying vehicles moved in perfect lines between the buildings. He took out a small photo of his family back in Seoul and smiled. He was going to make them proud, even if it meant being the strongest, heaviest, and possibly scariest student in the academy. Later that evening, as he typed his first report to the Earth Exchange program, Jai-Ho could hear the other students gathering in the common room, discussing the Deathworlder who had come to study with them. Some sounded afraid, others intrigued. But Jai-Ho knew that by the end of his time here, he would show them that humans were more than just survivors of a harsh world. They were friends worth having, even if they came from a planet that most species considered impossibly dangerous. The Academy's physical training center was unlike anything Jai-Ho had ever seen. The large room could change its gravity levels for different species, and exercise machines floated in midair. Students of various shapes and sizes were doing what looked like very light exercises to him. Professor Taiwan Kang, who had bright orange skin and 4 arms, called the class to order. "Today, we welcome our new Earth student. Ji-Ho, please demonstrate your normal exercise routine." Jai-Ho nodded and walked to an open area. The floor automatically strengthened under his feet. He started with simple stretches, But even these made his classmates gasp. The way his joints and muscles moved seemed impossible to them. "Now some basic exercises," Jaiho said. He dropped down and started doing push-ups. The entire class stopped to watch. In the Earth-normal gravity of his designated area, each push-up made a small thud that echoed through the room. Yi-jun Choi, a tall student with crystal-like skin, approached cautiously. "How many can you do?" "Usually about 50 as a warm-up," Jaiho replied, continuing his exercise. Professor Kang was recording everything with great interest. "Fascinating. The muscle power required for such movement in Earth gravity is remarkable." Next came the weightlifting section. The professor had to specially adjust the equipment for Earth-level gravity. Jaiho loaded what he considered a light weight for bench pressing. His new friend, Hae-yun Park, looked worried. "Should someone spot him?" she asked the professor. "I will help," offered Yi-jun, moving to stand near Jaiho's head. Jaiho lifted the weight easily, doing several repetitions while Yi-jun watched in amazement. "This is just my warm-up weight," Jaiho explained. When he added more weight, the professor had to reinforce the entire platform. Other students gathered around, their recording devices out, documenting what to them seemed like an impossible feat of strength. "On my planet," Yi-jun said, "this much weight would crush a ground vehicle." Jaiho completed his set and sat up. He wasn't even breathing hard. Earth's gravity makes us naturally stronger. We have to be strong to move around normally back home. A small group of students started asking questions all at once. They wanted to know about Earth sports, daily activities, and how humans could survive carrying such weight. Professor Kang had to restore order to the class. "Students, this is why Earth is classified as a death world," the professor explained. "The high gravity, dense atmosphere, and extreme weather create naturally stronger beings." Jaiho's demonstration shows us just a small part of human physical capabilities. After class, as Jaiho was putting away the weights, Hae-yun approached him. "I did some research about Earth. Is it true that humans run long distances for fun?" Jaiho smiled. "Yes, we have something called marathons. People run 42 kilometers just to challenge themselves." Hae-yun's silver skin seemed to pale even more. "But why?" "Because we can," Jaiho said simply. "On Earth, we learn to push our limits. It's part of who we are." Word spread quickly through the academy about the human's physical demonstration. By dinner time, Jaiho's datapad was full of messages from students in other classes asking to watch his next training session. Some brave souls even asked if he would teach them Earth exercises, modified for their abilities. Professor Kang sent him a special note. "Your presence here is more valuable than you know. You're helping us understand not just human strength, but human spirit. Keep showing us what Earth has taught you." Jaiho looked at the message and felt proud. He wasn't just a student here anymore. He was becoming an ambassador for his entire planet, showing others that what they called a death world had created something remarkable. A species that didn't just survive against incredible odds, but thrived on overcoming them. The Xenobiology laboratory gleamed with advanced equipment. Students sat at their stations while holographic displays showed various life forms from across the galaxy. Jaiho's lab partner, Miru-song, adjusted her crystalline protective suit as she sat next to him. "Today we will study predator species," Professor Ta-won announced. "Each pair will analyze their home world's most dangerous creature." Mirai brightened up. "Oh, that's easy. The most dangerous predator on my world is the spiral hunter. It can paralyze small creatures with its light patterns." Jaiho nodded politely. "That's interesting. On Earth, we have many dangerous animals. Perhaps we should discuss bears." "What is a bear?" Mirai asked, activating her datapad. "It's a large mammal that can weigh up to 600 kilograms. They can run at 56 kilometers per hour, climb trees, and swim. Their claws can tear through metal and are strong enough to break bones with one hit," Jaiho explained. Mirai's protective suit changed color, indicating stress. And these creatures, they live in the wild, near humans. Some do. We have warning signs in their territories. But bears aren't even our most dangerous animals, Jaiho continued. We have sharks in our oceans. They're perfect hunting machines with multiple rows of teeth. The professor had moved closer, listening with great interest. Jaiho, please share with the class. Your Earth predators sound fascinating. Jaiho stood up and walked to the front. The holographic display activated, showing Earth's various predators as he described them. The class watched in horror as he explained about lions, tigers, and crocodiles. But the most dangerous creatures on Earth aren't always the biggest, Jaiho added. We have tiny spiders whose poison can kill in hours. Even our insects can be deadly. Hornets can spray poison that melts flesh, and army ants move in groups large enough to devour larger animals. A student in the back raised a trembling hand. You live with all these creatures. How do humans survive? We adapt, Jaiho said simply. We learn which areas these animals live in. We develop medicines for their poisons. Sometimes we even keep the smaller ones as pets. Pets, several students exclaimed at once. Yes, many humans keep snakes, spiders, or small predatory mammals as companions. We also have domesticated wolves. We call them dogs now. They help us hunt other animals. Professor Tadwan's multiple eyes blinked rapidly. Jaiho, your world's biology is remarkable. What you consider normal would be classified as extreme hazards on most planets. Myray had been quiet for a while, but finally spoke up. Jaiho, you mentioned these weren't even the most dangerous things on Earth. What is? Jaiho thought for a moment. Probably humans themselves. We learn to survive among all these creatures by becoming better predators ourselves. We can run longer than any animal, throw objects with deadly accuracy, and make tools to overcome any threat. The classroom fell silent. The students looked at Jaiho with new understanding. They had been worried about having a Deathworlder among them, but now they realized something more important. They were in the presence of a species that had evolved alongside nature's most efficient killers and had emerged dominant. As the class ended, Professor Tadwan made an announcement. Tomorrow's lesson will be special. Jaiho will teach us about Earth's defensive adaptations. I believe we all have much to learn about survival from our human colleague. Walking back to his dorm, Jaiho heard Mirai telling her friends, "Wait until you hear about their weather. Jaiho says they have storms that can lift buildings." He smiled, knowing tomorrow's class would bring even more surprises for his classmates. The emergency alarms in the Galactic Academy started flashing with a soft blue light. A gentle voice announced over the speakers, "Warning, minor atmospheric pressure change detected. All students please proceed to designated safe areas." Students began rushing through the corridors, their movements showing clear signs of distress. Hyunwoo Park and Soo Jin Yoon, who were studying with Jaiho in the library, looked particularly worried. "We must go to the shelter immediately," Hyunwoo said, his scaled skin changing color with anxiety. The atmospheric fluctuation could be dangerous. Jaiho checked the environmental readings on his datapad. The pressure change was equivalent to what Earth experiences before a light rain shower. He remained seated, continuing to read his textbook. "Jaiho, why aren't you moving? This is serious." Soo-jin's voice trembled as she spoke. "On Earth, this kind of pressure change happens almost daily," Jaiho explained calmly. "We call it weather." The two aliens stared at him in disbelief. More students gathered around, temporarily forgetting their fear as curiosity took over. Professor Tadwan, who was supervising the evacuation, approached their group. "Perhaps this is a learning opportunity," the professor said. "Jaiho, please tell us about Earth's atmospheric conditions." Jaiho stood up and addressed the growing crowd. "Earth's weather changes constantly. We have rain, where water falls from the sky. Sometimes it's gentle, other times it comes with lightning and thunder." "Lightning?" someone asked. "Natural electricity in the sky," Jaiho explained. Each bolt can be 5 times hotter than the surface of your sun. Thunder is the sound it makes, like an explosion. The students murmured in horror. Sujin's protective membrane began to glow with stress patterns. But that's not all, Jaiho continued. We have tornadoes, spinning columns of air that can lift buildings, hurricanes that can flood entire cities, blizzards that cover everything in frozen water called snow. Sometimes the ground itself shakes in earthquakes. And humans survive this? Hyunwoo asked in amazement. We don't just survive. We've learned to predict these events, build structures that withstand them, and even enjoy some of them. Many humans find storms beautiful. Children play in the snow. Some people chase tornadoes to study them. Professor Tawan's recording device was working overtime. Fascinating. Your species has adapted to survive conditions that would be considered planetary disasters on most worlds. The emergency alarms suddenly stopped. The gentle voice announced that the atmospheric pressure had stabilized. Students looked embarrassed about their earlier panic. Jaiho, Sujin asked quietly, how do you stay so calm during emergencies? On Earth, we learn to assess danger levels early. What's dangerous for one species might be normal for another. It's why humans are good at adapting to new situations. Later that evening, Jaiho received a message from the Academy's administration. They requested his help in revising the emergency response protocols, particularly in distinguishing between actual dangers and natural variations that some species might find concerning. As he worked on the new guidelines, Jaiho thought about how different perspectives could be. What his classmates saw as a crisis, he saw as a mild weather change. Yet their ability to survive in conditions he would find challenging, like the thin atmosphere of their home worlds, was equally impressive. In his daily report to Earth, Jaiho wrote, "Today I learned that being a Deathworlder doesn't just mean being tough. It means understanding that strength comes in many forms, and what's normal for us might be extraordinary for others." The Academy's warning sirens began blaring during the evening study period. This time, it wasn't a drill. The environmental control systems had malfunctioned, causing rapid changes in atmosphere and temperature throughout the building. Jaiho was in the library with Jin Woo-nam when the emergency began. The temperature dropped significantly, and the air pressure fluctuated dangerously. Many students started showing signs of distress as their environmental suits struggled to compensate. The backup systems aren't responding, Jin Woo reported, checking his datapad. His protective membrane flickered with anxiety. Temperature is approaching freezing levels in some sections. Jaiho immediately assessed the situation. On Earth, such conditions would be challenging but manageable. Here, they could be lethal for many species. We need to organize an evacuation, he said, standing up. But first, we must help those most vulnerable to temperature changes. Using his knowledge of Earth survival techniques, Jaiho began directing students to safer areas. He remembered how humans dealt with extreme weather conditions back home. Move to the inner rooms, he instructed. Body heat will help maintain temperature. Stay close together. The Academy's emergency protocols weren't designed for this type of systemic failure. Jaiho's experience with Earth's variable conditions proved invaluable. He worked with Jin Woo to coordinate groups of students, using their different biological needs to determine priorities. Some species can't tolerate cold, Jin Woo explained, helping guide a group of heat-dependent students. Others need specific atmospheric pressures to survive. On Earth, we learn to handle multiple types of weather in one day, Jaiho responded, lifting a fallen shelf that blocked an evacuation route. The key is adaptation and protecting those most at risk first. Professor Tadwan arrived with the emergency response team. They found Jaiho using his Earth-enhanced strength to keep a malfunctioning door open, allowing students to pass through safely. The maintenance robots can't function in these conditions, the professor reported. Then we do it manually, Jaiho said, like we would on Earth during a power outage. He organized teams of stronger students to help others, creating a chain of assistance that worked despite the failing systems. Hours passed as they worked to evacuate the academy. Jiho's endurance, developed on Earth, allowed him to continue helping long after others needed rest. He carried weaker students to safety, helped repair emergency barriers, and used his experience with extreme conditions to find safe paths through the failing building. Finally, the last student was evacuated to the emergency shelters. The maintenance team managed to stabilize the environmental systems, but the academy had gained valuable lessons about emergency preparedness. Later, in the recovery center, Jinwoo approached Jiho. "You saved many lives today," he said. "Your Earth survival instincts made the difference." Jiho shook his head modestly. "On Earth, we learn early that survival often depends on helping each other. No one survives a harsh environment alone." The Academy's administration called a special meeting the next day. They had recorded Jiho's actions during the crisis and planned to incorporate his Earth-based survival strategies into their emergency procedures. What they had once seen as mere Deathworld adaptation had proven to be sophisticated survival knowledge. Professor Tawan summarized it best in his report. The incident demonstrated that human adaptability extends beyond mere physical resilience. Their experience with Earth's diverse challenges creates problem solvers who can function effectively in crisis situations while helping others survive. As Jiho returned to his repaired quarters that evening, he found messages of gratitude from many students. His classmates no longer saw him as just the strong Deathworlder. They recognized him as someone whose planet's challenges had created not just strength, but wisdom. The final week of the semester arrived at the Galactic Academy of Sciences. The Grand Hall, with its crystalline dome showing the 3 moons above, was prepared for the closing ceremony. Dean Sung Ho Yang stood at the podium, addressing the assembled students and faculty. Jiho sat among his classmates, reflecting on his remarkable semester. Hye-yun and Dong-hyun, now his closest friends, sat beside him. The distance that had once existed between him and his fellow students had transformed into deep respect and understanding. "This semester has brought unprecedented changes to our academy," Dean Yang announced. "We have learned that our differences make us stronger, and that what we consider impossible on one world might be ordinary on another." The dean activated the hall's holographic system, displaying highlights from the semester. Images appeared of Jiho's physical training sessions, his emergency response during the environmental crisis, and his unique problem-solving approaches in various classes. "For the first time in our history," the dean continued, "we present a special commendation for bridge building between worlds. Jiho Kim, please approach the podium." As Jiho walked forward, he noticed something different. Students who had once moved away from him in fear now smiled and nodded with respect. Professor Tadwan's multiple eyes gleamed with pride. "Your presence here has transformed our understanding of what we call Deathworlds," Dean Yang said, presenting Jiho with a crystal award. "You have shown us that challenging environments create not just physical strength, but innovation, adaptability, and compassion." Jiho accepted the award and addressed the assembly. "On Earth, we have a saying, 'Adversity builds character.' Every challenge on my world taught us something valuable. But my time here has taught me that every world, no matter how different, has its own strength to share." After the ceremony, Hye-yun and Dong-hyun revealed their surprise. They had organized a farewell gathering featuring carefully selected Earth-safe foods that all species could enjoy. The Academy's cafeteria had worked with Earth's exchange program to create special recipes that bridged the gap between different biological needs. "We wanted to show that we could adapt too," Hye-yun explained, her silver skin glowing with excitement. "Just as you learned to live in our environment, we learned to appreciate yours." Professor Tawan presented Jiho with a data crystal containing all the research they had compiled about Earth's unique characteristics. "Your world's challenges have given us new perspectives on survival, adaptation, and growth. Future students will study these lessons for generations." As the gathering continued, Jiho observed his classmates sharing stories, laughing together, and discussing plans for future exchanges with Earth. The barriers between Deathworlder and standard gravity species had dissolved, replaced by mutual respect and understanding. The next morning, as Jeho prepared for his return journey to Earth, Dean Yang made an unexpected announcement. The Academy would establish a new department dedicated to environmental adaptation studies, inspired by Earth's example of thriving in challenging conditions. Remember, Jeho told his friends before departing, what seems impossible on one world might be everyday life on another. The key is not just surviving, but understanding and learning from each other. As his transport prepared for departure, Jeho looked back at the Academy's crystal towers reaching into the purple sky. He had arrived as an outsider, a curiosity from a Deathworld. He was leaving as a bridge between worlds, having shown that Earth's harsh conditions had created not monsters, but innovators, protectors, and teachers. The greatest lesson wasn't about human strength or Earth's challenges. It was about how understanding different perspectives could transform fear into respect, and how sharing knowledge could make every species stronger.